This is Nick from Boston, and this is the Katie Black Show.
Participation. What woman in North Carolina has gone up and down on more citizens?
Probably Parker.
Cherry Berry. Cherry Berry.
Cherry Berry.
The elevator. The lady that's in the elevator.
She has retired.
Katie, control it.
Okay. Leonardo DiCaprio. This is reported this week. Reportedly opposed co-star Meryl Streep's nude scene in the new movie Don't Look Up, telling production, "I will not look up."
Going back to essentially, obviously, being addicted and then going into jail, like you go through withdrawal, like what was that experience like?
Well, I basically just slept for like 5 days straight. And by the time I woke up, I was like in kind of a fog, but I didn't detox off opiates. Like I always kept a rule. I never did the same drug more than 3 days in a row. And so I never had like withdrawals. But, you know, with the uppers and stuff, you just stay awake. And then finally you just crash and sleep it off. But, you know, yeah, I always kept a rule. But mentally, I was addicted. And, you know, I couldn't have a good day unless if I was high. And it was, you know, getting me involved in dangerous stuff. And, you know, I got to a point where like I was addicted to the trauma and I didn't even realize it, because sitting here in peace was like
Weird to you?
unfathomable to me. Like I was constantly, and that sitting there waiting for, you know, it all to hit the fan was far worse than being in the midst of chaos. Like it's like, okay, all right, we got to fight our way out of this. Like, let's go. Like that becomes a norm to you, but it's the sitting and waiting, you know, for it all to, you know, it never occurred to me that I don't have to live a life of chaos. It was like, I just, like the trauma warps your brain so much. Like you really just, you think that's all life is, but it really doesn't have to be. And so it took me a long time to like kind of come out of that. And then when I went to jail, you know, solitary confinement, it slows your brain down from the lack of stimulation. And that's basically what county jail does to people. The only stimulation they get is violence and chaos. Other than that, there's nothing happening. So it's like you either have this one extreme or the other. So then when you get out, your brain, like when I went to Walmart, oh my God, so overwhelming because it's so much stuff. And it's like your brain doesn't know what to do with that. And you go from these white walls and nothing happening to, okay, there's people moving around, and it's overstimulating. So like I would have the worst panic attacks going into Walmart after I got out of prison. Like I would throw up. I would get physically ill from it. And that's the problem with being institutionalized. It literally rewires your brain so that anything slightly stimulating is so overwhelming. And like it puts you in like fight survival mode. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize that. Like they're literally creating people that are so traumatized. Everyday life situations are completely intolerable to them.
I don't necessarily like fault those people for thinking that or saying that. But I think that a lot of what I've learned through my sobriety and like following other sober people, whether they're artists or not, is just that when you know, like to use that phrase, but like you don't have to be anything. Like you don't have to have any sort of blueprint, I guess, for substance abuse or usage to like know that you have a problem. Mm-hmm. Like where it was for me, because like if you are someone that was a coworker or a friend of mine, it's like maybe you wouldn't know unless you went out with me, or you kind of knew like what alcohol just became to me and how it just like started to run my life, even though I wasn't a daily drinker or, you know, someone. Luckily, I'm grateful that my body, I didn't get to the point where I was physically dependent. But it was something that needed to happen for a while. And once I knew, I just was ready to make that shift. And it has been extremely difficult, but extremely rewarding and beautiful. And I can't imagine my life now without the people that I've met and the things that have happened to me because of my sobriety.
No, very cool. Thank you. Thank you for being open, or just even like online, not even just in the interview. Yeah, I found, like I said, with me not drinking for a long time now, it is very interesting socially how like society judges you. Even like it's very interesting. Even like just a lot like I don't yeah, I mean I could have a whole show about all that, or just like I think it actually makes people uncomfortable a little bit that I'm not partaking in drinking with them. I don't know if you experience that, or you just stay away from the whole scene altogether.
No, I absolutely experienced that and like completely understand what you're talking about. It is so expected. Like it just is. And I think even with I've had the experience where when I tell someone that I'm sober or I'm out, because I at first in like my extremely early, like I would still consider myself in fairly early sobriety, but I would like in my extremely early sobriety, I couldn't go out to places. Like I couldn't go to bars. It just wasn't safe. It wasn't a good idea. And now that I do, I go out. Like I'm still a pretty social person. I enjoy, I mean, the music scene, you know, I perform in bars, I'm seeing shows, I'm out, you know, at concerts, whatever it is. But it is what you just said. It's even people that, whether or not, like, I'm not going to be the one to judge and say, oh, they're uncomfortable because they also have a problem, but you also never know. And I think because it's so societally expected to drink, to have a good time, to let loose, to unwind, to whatever, to celebrate, that if you're not doing that, I think people project. Like, I guess I'll just say that. Like, it is a thing that if, like, I did it, I projected. If somebody else wasn't drinking, or like my friends that I knew that were sober then before I was, I would be like, oh shit, like, why? Like maybe or feel the need to be like, well, I don't drink all the time. Like, or I'm just a social drinker. Like people will over-explain or overcompensate. And I don't know, it's awkward. And I know that a lot of times it's well-meaning from like people that, you know, but yeah, it's completely, I understand that feeling. Like it happens every single
As
day.
you record, Jeffrey Dahmer's like #1 on Netflix right now. Have you dived into that?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing. Yeah.
And what's your, again, I'm all into culture and society. Like what do you think happened to that kid?
I think, I mean, it's so the serial killer thing I separate from like the ghosts and stuff. I mean, that's less fun. That's like,
Yeah,
really cool, right? No, but it's true. But it's all in the same, like, I mean, we're all fascinated by true crime. I really liked the show. I thought they did a good job at highlighting just what it meant to be a person of color at that time in history, and like why this should have been solved so many times, and that these people were ignored and his victims weren't on the news because they weren't white. I think all of that, and just humanizing the victims, like Tony's episode, I don't know for those watching, but it meant a lot to me that it wasn't just, oh, these are people he murdered. And it was like, this was this person with his hopes and dreams, his whole life ahead of him, his family that cared about him. And like that to me was like maybe what's missing from a lot of these like true crime documentaries and shows. So I loved it in that respect, because I was like, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. 'Cause it was a big deal, you know. It makes you enraged watching, or that's how I felt. I just felt so angry that like this guy got away with so many. There was no reason for that to have happened, and it still happens. But
It's still someone I was like though, but I was like trying to like, again, how many times can I say analyze in this last like 45 minutes? But analyze all the like especially the serial killers of like the 70s. So like that was like Dahmer was like,
what's going on? You're right.
Bundy, and someone, again, no, you know, whatever, anyone's listening, whatever. But this is what this gal told me this past week, and she says that she read some kind of article, what have you, that there's a theory that like all these crazy guys, like the span of the time that they were born, obviously like abortion wasn't legal, and like not that means that no one had them, but that like these are all people from like really broken, dysfunctional homes that maybe like they should have, like, I don't know, they should have aborted if that was an option, like a legal option.
Right. Here we are now.
Yes. Oh.
Right. It is, history repeats. It does. Like, you're so right about that.
And I was like, oh wow.
Dahmer was weird because it was like, a lot of these serial killers have like terrible upbringings, and like for all intents and purposes, he didn't, right? And so that was fascinating because I was like, all right, this dude like came out the womb just
Fucked. And that's what.
fucked, like couldn't control it. Really wasn't raised that bad. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like terrible, right? And I was like, wow, like but that goes to show that some people just have these conditions that they're literally coming to the table with.
Okay, one more question about Dahmer and I'll get off of it. But then I kept seeing this thing, and I go back and again, I watch old interviews, that the dad keeps saying that the kid was never the same after like some hernia surgery.
I know. I've heard that too. And he could be totally right. Like, maybe
What do you think about that?
Maybe, because I'm not a doctor, but like, what if maybe something happened? I mean, it was the 70s. Things still happen today. There's medical malpractice or things happen and people swear that they're different or there's something wrong. And the doctors are like, no, you're fine.
Like Wikipedia of the name that we just dropped. I need the clown connection. And end on that note.
Okay. End on that note. You're trying to sour my impression of clowns. Yeah.
No, Katie with you. Katie thorough now. Don't
All right. Well, John Wayne Gacy was if you haven't heard of him, he's a serial killer from like, I don't know, several decades ago who, his profession was a
He
clown.
didn't wear no diapers.
Oh. Yeah, you can look more into that if you want to.
He didn't wear no diapers.
He basically he dresses as a clown. He like enticed like mainly children and stuff into his house.
He was the
and
best
killed them.
suppository.
Like, that's not all clowns.
I know. He was always wintergreen.
Yeah, he's not. Don't give a fuck about John Wayne Gacy. There's nobody else like him. All the clowns are good. All right, that's it.
Wait, and I guess my final, since I have you up here, is Charlotte. So I know you kind of sort of just moved here, and I want to know your thoughts.
I'm gonna move out in like a year. That's my thoughts.
You're leaving?
Yeah.
Where you going? Texas?
No. I don't know, either like Virginia or Arizona.
No, go to West Virginia with me. I'll put you in a homage.
That sounds nice. Talk to me later about that.
And this isn't just like, hey, I'm having a rough month. There's something really wrong happening. So with Britney Spears, my understanding of what happened was her father kind of took that role to say to the court, like, hey, look, like she's off the rails. She can't handle herself. She needs somebody else to handle her. But the interesting thing is typically when there's a conservatorship, my understanding, at least in California, is it's a pretty high bar to say this person's completely not able to do what they need to be able to do. And this conservatorship was entered, and then a couple months later, I think, is when she started her Vegas residency. So they're saying to the court, hey, she's not able to perform basic tasks to keep herself alive on her own, but somehow she's able to go and perform in front of millions of people and make millions and millions of dollars that her father's not profiting from. And that's kind of the twist that I'm seeing that I think is pretty horrible and interesting.
What up?